as an anarchist, as an abolitionist, as an atheist?
As an adulterer, anything beginning with A.
We'll go to more calls. Next up, William from Belvedere. Good morning.
Yes, thank you very much. First, I'd like to say how much I admire much of what I've heard about Mr. Hitchens say. I have a question about writing technique when it comes to history. It goes back to something early in the show that you said, Mr. Hitchens. When you were describing Sally Hitchens and the baby that they had
Sally
together.
Hemings.
Sally Hemings.
I don't know that she was ever a Hitchens.
Well,
yeah.
forgive me. No, forgive me. The baby that she had with Thomas Jefferson, or the babies. You said you put forth the concept that she had said to him, well, we'll have this baby, but baby's got to be free. Now, what strikes me, and maybe I'm the only one it ever gets to, but that people will imagine that people said something that they really can have no way of knowing that they said, and then it forms an image in the listener's mind about the individual. Because all of a sudden, if that was true, and I don't know if it is true, and probably you don't either, we have an image of Sally Hemings as a strong woman, modern woman, standing up for her rights, etc., and I certainly hope that she did. But we really have no way of knowing that that's true, and yet I do think that authors do that over and over again, and I'd appreciate your comment on it.
Yeah, well, that's a very ingenious challenge, and I have two answers to it. One is by way of an anecdote. I was invited to a symposium on biography at the Smithsonian not long ago in Washington with Michael Corder, very distinguished editor and writer whose book on General Grant is out in this same series.
Distinguished equestrian as well.
And distinguished equestrian, one might say. And Francine Prose, I think, was the other one. And we were talking about the biographer's art, and I was keeping fairly quiet because I'm new to this. And Michael Corder said, one thing a biographer must never do is, one thing he said that greatly irritated him when he came across it in the work of others was to say, at this point, so-and-so, whoever it might be, General Grant, must have thought, or no doubt felt, or he said, you mustn't do that. You have no right to do it. You have no reason to assume it either. You must curb that kind of, what would it be?
New journalism.
Yes, I suppose. Yes, old journalism reborn. And I would have nodded sagely at this, as I have in the past nodded when people have said that, or when I've read it in a review. But I suddenly realized I didn't quite agree with myself anymore, because I am willing to bet that I know what Jefferson thought when he saw Sally Hemings arrive in France for the first time. I think he thought it was the answer to his prayers. I think he thought. I think
she
what
was
he
all
thought.
14 years old, though, wasn't she?
Pushing 15, and by then, it was there was not much scruple on that score in those days. In any case, people were very often married extremely young, and there can be no doubt as to what he thought. In my mind, I thought, if I can't take this risk of saying, I don't say it in the book, but I did take it on the air just now. If I can't say that, then I think my intuitions are worthless to me. And it's important to realize, which is an assumption we can make, that the people who we're writing about in history have genitalia, which very often are left out. I'm for favor of putting these vital organs back in and assuming that they're there. And as Engels used to say, the key to the anatomy of the ape is the anatomy of man. You can work back if you're writing about an average male person. So that's my anecdotal defense. Second, I have to recommend another book to you. It's called Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings, An American Story. It's by Dr. Annette Gordon-Reed, who is professor of law at New York University and a specialist particularly in the law of evidence. And her book is an absolute masterpiece. I'm hugely in debt to it, as I say in my acknowledgements. And one point that she makes, I'll just offer this to you, is that in law, if people behave as if a promise has been made, if they act in a quid pro quo manner, you are entitled to make the assumption that there may have been an agreement to behave in that way. You can work back from the conduct to the bargain or the pledge. And it does seem as if Jefferson must have made a promise at some point because of the way he seems to have kept it, if you follow me.
We thank you for the call. A couple of questions from listeners via email. This one comes from Tim, who says, wonder what your guest would have to say about Berkeley School expunging Jefferson's name from their elementary school on the grounds that he was a slaveholder.
Does this really happen? Has this really happened?
I can't verify it one way or the other. Apparently, yes, producers are saying.
I mean, it's the sort of thing one does occasionally read about, yes, but that is simply trying to abolish history. I mean, it's not honoring a president necessarily to have a school named after him, but if you wanted to say it was an honor, there'd be many things to honor Jefferson for. For people to try and airbrush this out is, I think, pathetic, but it's very easy to do because of the prevailing ignorance and also the prevailing bien-pensant atmosphere.
Another question from a listener.
I wonder what they're going to call it instead, by the way.
Wow, I don't know. I think one learns from history that, as you say, usually exceptions like Jake Barnes, there's genitalia, there's usually feet of clay as well, regardless of who the iconic figure is. This is from one of our listeners who says, what did Jefferson think about the extermination and oppression of Native Americans? Do we know?
Oh, yeah, we do know.
What do we know?
We know because of the instructions to Lewis and Clark.
Oh, yes.
And because also Jefferson's attitude, as expressed in Notes on the State of Virginia, where he has a great admiration, consistent admiration, even envy at some points, for the prowess and skill and vitality and bravery of American Indians. He has no problem with no race theory occurs to him about them. He doesn't even suspect, as he does about Africans, that maybe they're of a different creation. And he says, look, if they would just get rid of their priests, their terrible witch doctors, if they would just stop treating their women like slaves and chattel, and if they would move from exclusively hunting to doing a bit more agriculture, this could be great. These could be our best friends. And this is what he continues to hope throughout the Lewis and Clark expedition too. And everyone who's read their story knows that in many cases they formed great and successful bonds with Indians. But the other shoe of this, admittedly rather condescending view, is if they don't agree to settle, as it were, to integrate, to realize that the continent doesn't belong to them and there are other people who've arrived and they're going to stay and they're going to bring a lot of things with them, such as vaccination. Jefferson insisted on trying to vaccinate Indians and slaves against smallpox at a time when the church said that was an interference with God's design. Sorry for my digression. If not, then they might have to be, the euphemism was removal. But he was never happier than as president than when receiving as equals delegations from Indian nations at the White House. He once kept the British ambassador waiting while he did this. He organized a wonderful library of books about Native Americans, and he arranged to have their languages written down and translated. All of this was lost in a terrible flood, but he took a greater and more humane and more intelligent interest in this topic than anyone before or since. And of course, the failure and the combined greed of the settlers and the stupidity of the Indians in thinking that they could prevent the settlers from coming ends with Jacksonian Indian removal and with the Cherokee Trail of Tears. But by then many of the Cherokee had decided to start a newspaper and write their language down and sit around for a bit and see if they couldn't profit from the arrival of Europeans. It makes one weep to think of the chances that were missed at this point.
I'm talking again with Christopher Hitchens. His book is Thomas Jefferson, Author of America. He'll be at City Arts and Lectures at Herbst Theater tomorrow with Scott Schaefer. Seconds left here. You want to say something about George Galloway in the seconds left?
No.
Don't want to go near that one.
No, thanks.
That's the Popinjay thing we were alluding to. That
yes.
People may not.
I would need a few more than a few seconds, even though he doesn't deserve it.
Wait.
I should like to add, as I think about my book, one of the things that I don't say enough about is how the proof of Jefferson's character as a Renaissance man is, I think, in the extraordinary trouble he went to try and make an alliance with the Native American peoples. I should have credited him more and dwelt on the subject longer.
Well, it's a book that I think accomplishes a great deal. It is part of an Eminent Lives series that is put out by HarperCollins. And again, the book is called Thomas Jefferson, Author of America. Christopher Hitchens, always good to have you. Thank you for being with me.
No, it's very nice of you to invite me again.
And we're coming to the end of this program.